So with the first round of the 2026 NFL draft complete, I wanted to grade every single first round pick. Last night, right after the draft, it was kind of a reactionary winners and losers. So today we're going to go team by team. Some teams had 0 first round picks, some had 2. And let me know if you agree or disagree with anything I say or my grades on the screen. And I'm always going to hold myself accountable because in a year from now, I'm definitely going to react to these grades and see what has aged well and what hasn't. So we're going to start off at the top. Fernando Mendoza to the Las Vegas Raiders, a pick we knew that was going to happen pretty much back in February. Whoever got the number 1 overall pick, most likely after the national championship game, was going to select Fernando Mendoza. The Raiders do so. I'm giving them an A. I'm not going to overthink this one too much. They get their franchise quarterback. They had a chance to take their franchise quarterback, and I'm really interested to see what they end up doing on day number 2. Are they going to give him a weapon? Are they going to take maybe a Denzel Boston? Are they going to take another target? Are they going to take an offensive lineman? Or are they going to address defense? We'll see. But either way, good start to the draft for the Raiders. You found your franchise quarterback, him and Clint Kubiak now with Ashton Jeanty and Brock Bowers. It's going to be fun. And next up at number 2, the New York Jets selected David Bailey, a raw-ish edge rusher out of Texas Tech. Definitely an Aaron Glenn archetype here. I'm giving them a B for this selection. I would have went Arvell Reese if I was in the Jets position. You obviously were not able to draft a quarterback at the spot. Ever since Dante Moore went back to school, the Jets were never taking a QB here. So I just would have went Reese. I think he gives you a little bit more optionality. And I don't really love the idea of defaulting to Aaron Glenn's guy because I think there's a high chance Aaron Glenn is not coaching this team in a year from now. And then it's like, why did we just make a huge selection here at number 2 for a head coach that's not even here anymore? I do think Bailey's going to be a solid player though for the Jets. That's why I'm giving it a B. They need another edge rusher. They traded away Jermaine Johnson this offseason. It's a pivotal year for Will McDonald on this front 7 for the Jets, and I think Bailey will be a nice long-term piece. I just like Reese a little bit more, and since you're drafting at number 2, holding you to a little bit of a higher standard because you had everybody on the board here, and I think you messed it up just slightly, but I still like Bailey long-term. And then at number 3 here, the Arizona Cardinals selected Jeremiah Love. Jeremiah Love, the player, I think is going to be a great Cardinal. Like, I would give his output an A, and I would not be surprised in a year or 2 from now that Jeremiah Love is competing for an All-Pro. But the process, I'm giving them a D for this selection. I just don't think there is a scenario in which the Cardinals and Jeremiah Love are both good within the next few years. This team needs offensive line. They need defensive line. They need linebackers. They can use another player in the secondary. They need a quarterback, right? I just don't think that this team is going to be competitive at the top of the NFC within the next 4 years. And those are the most 4 valuable years of Jeremiah Love's contract. I think Love is better than Ashton Jeanty, but we just saw Ashton Jeanty struggle in Las Vegas when he was a top 10 pick last year because of the lack of offensive line talent. And that's the same thing right now with the Arizona Cardinals. And yeah, they could dress offensive line on day number 2, day number 3. But right now, this is still a work in progress. It's Paris Johnson and not a lot of great pieces outside of him. I watched Isaac Seumalo a ton last year for my Steelers. I don't really think he's a game changer at the guard position. So this team has a great running back on paper. After just signing Tyler Algier, you have Trey Benson, you have James Conner. I don't really get the dynamic of what Arizona's trying to build right now. Like I said, I think Love is going to be a good player in this league, and I think he's going to put up some big time numbers, especially fantasy in Arizona. I just don't think it's going to directly correlate with this team being good, and now you're just not on the right timeline, so I'm giving it a D. But hey, if the Cardinals and Jeremiah Love are both good next year, year after, I'll eat my words. So at number 4, the Tennessee Titans kind of shocked everybody when they selected Carnell Tate, the wide receiver out of Tennessee. Now, I was saying throughout the mock draft cycle, especially looking at other people's mock drafts, why is nobody mocking a wide receiver to the Titans? Like, are we totally sold on Wan'Dale Robinson, Elikai Maynor, and Chimere Dike as the main weapons for Cam Ward? Like, do we trust that? I could see it being week 4 and say, what are Cam Ward's weapons? This is not sustainable for him to be a good quarterback in the NFL. So I'm glad they went out and drafted a receiver. I would have drafted the other one. I like Jordan Tyson more than Carnell Tate, so I'm giving it a B. I think it's rich to take a receiver that's not like a generational guy here at number 4 because Carnell Tate was like the wide receiver 2 last year for Ohio State because Jeremiah Smith is most likely going to be a top 4 pick next year in the 2027 draft. But I do like the process of getting Cam Ward another weapon. Jeremiah Love was off the board. Yes, you could have taken Arvell Reese. I would have given that pick an A. So I'm giving this one a B, but I still like it though because I'm glad that they're trying to give Cam Ward another weapon to throw to, and we'll see how Tate is going to be in year number 1 and long term with Cam Ward. I like this for Tennessee. So the Giants here at number 5, they didn't really need Arvell Reese, but like arguably the best player in the draft fell into their lap. So I'm giving them an A. Looks like he's going to play linebacker in year number 1. They moved on from Bobby Okereke in the offseason. They did pay Tremaine Edmonds, but you paid Tremaine Edmonds on this 2-3-year deal is not going to deter you from drafting the best player in the draft. And you think Reese could be a linebacker in year 1 and then kind of change over to an edge rusher. They're not trading Kayvon Thibodeau, but he's probably not going to be on the roster next year. You did select Abdul Carter, top 3 last year. You're paying Brian Burns big money. Can you actually orchestrate a good enough pass rush with Reese, Burns, and Abdul Carter? We're going to have to wait and see. It gives John Harbaugh a great weapon. I'm giving them an A, like I said, because you're getting an elite talent here at number 5, somebody I thought could have gone 2, 3, or 4. I'm just fascinated to see how they utilize him in his rookie season. And then at number 6, we had the Kansas City Chiefs trade up with the Cleveland Browns to select Mansour Delane. I'm giving this one a B. Now, I didn't like the process on draft night because I thought Delane would have been there at 9. Now, there's going to be reports that the Commanders would have taken him at number 7. Hey, then take Caleb Downs, then take somebody else on the board, like maybe Ruben Bain. I think that would have been great as well. You could have taken an offensive lineman. Either way, they trade up to take Delane, who in my opinion was the best corner in this draft. And it looks like there was a wide margin on him to the next best corner, because the second corner in this draft was Chris Johnson to the Dolphins in the 20s. We didn't even see Jamad McCoy going round 1. We didn't see Avion Terrell going round number 1. So Delane was clearly, I guess, team CB1 in this class. No doubt about it. They gave up a pick in the 70s for Mansour Delane. I mean, Kansas City is great at developing corners. So the fact that you traded up and you took somebody that, yes, it's a position of need. You moved on from McDuffie this offseason. You lost Watson this offseason. You need him to be a CB1 for you. And I think they will develop him to be one. I just think they could have just stayed at 9 and maybe just taken somebody else. But I like Delane a ton as a player, so I'm giving them a B. I know some people have been harsh on this one. So number 7, the Washington Commanders took Sonny Styles. I'm giving this one an A. Now, Sonny Styles isn't going to be like the most premier position. It's not like you're taking a stud edge rusher, offensive tackle, or quarterback here. But Commanders fans just watched Bobby Wagner. And you're going to go from Bobby Wagner to Sonny Styles. It's like watching, I don't know, you're going to be watching basically a minivan to a Lamborghini out there going hash to hash and just getting downhill. Styles is going to be a beast for Dan Quinn in this Commanders defense. And this has been a fun Commanders defensive overhaul this offseason with Leo Chanel, with Odafe Owe, and now Sonny Styles is like 3 playmakers coming here to the nation's capital. I hope they maybe still address secondary a little bit. I think they would have been a wise Delane team as well, maybe a Caleb Downs team in hindsight, if Styles was off the board. Either way, I'm giving them an A. I love this for Washington. And then at number 8, my wide receiver 1 goes to the Saints. I didn't think they were going to do it. I thought maybe they were going to take a corner. They were going to take Ruben Bain. They select Jordan Tyson. And yes, if there's a medical concern, you could dock this pick, but I'm giving it an A because I do believe Jordan Tyson is the best wide receiver in this year's class. Throughout the cycle, it just reminded me a ton of Ted McMillan in last year's cycle, just getting that prospect fatigue where it's like, all right, he's been the number 1 wide receiver prospect all year long. Now, how can we maybe give somebody else the flowers to be wide receiver 1 in this class? That ended up being Tatum at one point, Makai Lemon. There was people that had Omar Cooper going ahead of Jordan Tyson at one point in these mocks, which kind of is now funny in hindsight, but he killed his pro day. As long as he's healthy going into next year, this is exactly what New Orleans needs around Tyler Shuck. You got Chris Olave, you have Jordan Tyson. Hell yeah, man. Like Devon Valiant could be a great third tertiary wide receiver option. You bring in Travis Etienne this offseason. Jawan Johnson, serviceable tight end. You have an improved offensive line. The Saints offense could be a top 10 unit next year now. And then at number 9, the Cleveland Browns selected Spencer Fano out of Utah. I'm giving this one an A. They traded down and they took a position that they needed in an offensive tackle. Yeah, at number 6, you could have gone maybe a little bit more of a playmaker. You could have taken Jordan Tyson. Maybe I would have liked that a little bit more, but this offensive line is improved next year. At least they had a lot of free agents this offseason. They bring in Zion Johnson. They bring in Elton Jenkins. Tevin Jenkins returns. They bring in Titus Howard. Fano is going to get bumped to the left tackle spot, and he might end up being the best offensive lineman for this class long term. I'm glad they addressed receiver later in the draft, and Casey Concepcion. We'll get to that later as well, but I'm going to give them an A here. Hey, I'm always going to default to a positive grade if you take the offensive lineman, at least the right offensive lineman, and the Browns did that here. But then at number 10, the Giants took Francis Maianoa, so I'm going to be a little bit hypocritical in what I just said. I'm going to give them a B for this pick because now this is the pick that you traded for Dexter Lawrence, basically. You got number 10, a top 10 pick. Did a lot of weight calling it top 10 because if it was pick 11, I don't know if the trade would have sounded as good as it did on paper. And then you end up taking Maianoa, who's not going to be an offensive tackle right away. You're going to bump him to guard because you have Illuminor at the right tackle spot, and then you're going to end up maybe bumping Maianoa back to right tackle later. I just would have liked Caleb Downs a lot more. And if they wanted to take a sure thing, I would have maybe taken Vega Ione here as well. Unfortunately for them, Tyson was off the board, Carnell Tate was off the board, but I just felt like Caleb Downs would have made a lot more sense. And Giants fans, I would love to know if you agree with me or not, because yes, I think Mino is going to be a good player, and I was mocking him a ton to the Giants at 5, like early in the mock draft cycle, and Giants fans were like, we don't need an offensive lineman, and then you take him in number 10, and all of a sudden you need an offensive lineman. Either way, though, he's going to be a good player in New York. I just think Caleb Downs would have been the better pick. That's why I'm giving it a B. And Caleb Downs goes 11 to the Dallas Cowboys. I'm giving this one an A. They had to trade up one spot with the Miami Dolphins, who I thought were going to take Caleb Downs, and we'll get to the Dolphins in a second. But the Cowboys, man, this team kind of knows how to draft. The Cowboys took Tyler Booker last year. It was a good pick. They take Caleb Downs this year. Not the most valuable position in the NFL, the safety position, but Downs is going to be a top 5 player from this class, 100%. This man is an absolute stud, and the Cowboys needed him so much, and they got him there at number 11. I didn't think he was going to fall there. I thought he was going to go maybe as high as to the Giants at number 5. I thought he could have ended up in Washington, New Orleans, Kansas City, Miami, the Giants again at number 10. That doesn't happen. And I think maybe the Cowboys were very happy when Dexter Lawrence, like that trade happened, because maybe the Bengals would have just taken Caleb Downs at 10 in hindsight. Either way, this is an A for the Dallas Cowboys. They got one of the best players in the draft. They get a playmaker safety, a downhill attacker. This guy's going to be an absolute stud in Dallas. And then the Miami Dolphins took Caden Proctor here at number 12. I'm actually giving them a C for this one. I wasn't the biggest fan of Caden Proctor. Definitely not this high. I think there's a lot of development that needs to go into his game. Caden Proctor, I don't know if I'm like worried about the character concerns, because Nick Saban is, and if Nick Saban is, then maybe I should be as well. Proctor, though, like, it's definitely a position of need for the Miami Dolphins because their offensive line is abysmal. And yes, if it could be a stud tackle, that's way more valuable than taking Vega Ione, who's going to be a stud guard. I would have went that route. I would have just stayed and take Caleb Downs, or I would have taken Ruben Bain, because this team doesn't have Bradley Chubb anymore. They don't have Jalen Phillips, and you could have had Ruben Bain on the opposite side of Chop Robinson next year. They weren't going to be able to take Mansour Lane. I guess in hindsight, they weren't going to take Jamad McCoy here. They didn't want Dylan Thieneman. I think I would have liked that a little bit more as well than Caden Proctor. I'm just not the highest guy on Proctor, because if you wanted to tackle and didn't want Ione, I would have taken either Blake Miller or Monroe Freeling, who went a lot later. So at 13, the biggest shocker from this draft, the Los Angeles Rams took Ty Simpson. Yeah, Ty Simpson went in the first round. If you told me that 24 hours ago, I would have said, yeah, Cardinals traded up, maybe a team traded up in the end of the first round. No, the Rams took him here at number 13, the first round pick they got from the Atlanta Falcons trade in the 2025 draft. I'm giving them a D for this. I'm optimistic, though, about Ty Simpson in Los Angeles, just because it's Sean McVay. It's Les Snead. They have the track record. But the Sean McVay press conference after they made this pick does not give me optimism, because it looks like that Sean McVay did not want Ty Simpson. And if Stafford is playing 2 more years, Simpson is not going to be obviously playing for the next 2 years. He's going to be competing with Stetson Bennett for the backup job. Sean McVay said that. Doesn't give me a lot of confidence either. This feels like more of like a Les Snead pick than a Sean McVay pick. And I trust Sean McVay more than Les Snead, because he's the guy that actually needs to develop Ty Simpson, who has so much to go. And obviously it's going to benefit him playing behind Matthew Stafford and learning from Sean McVay for the next 2 to 3 years. I just think you have this window too. This would have made a little bit more sense if they kept the pick that they traded for Trent McDuffie and took him there. There were so many other playmakers on the board. Rotational offensive line doesn't sound that bad anymore, Rams fans, right? Ruben Bain was on the board. Ruben Bain and Jared Verse would have been nuts. Even take Kenyon Sadiq, take Mekhi Lemon, who was on the board. I think you could have honestly gotten maybe a better quarterback in the 20s in next year's draft than taking Ty Simpson at 13 here. I don't really like the process now that I slept on it. I'm giving it a D. And then the Ravens take Vega Ione there at number 14, the offensive guard from Penn State. I'm giving it an A. I hate this. I hate this so much as a Steelers fan, because they always take the guys I want. And yeah, maybe I wish the Steelers didn't make the playoffs, because, hey, they could have been picking at 14 to select Vega Ione, but we had to get blown out by the Houston Texans in the wild card round. Thank you, Aaron Rodgers. Thank you. So yeah, I'm giving this an A. You lose Tyler Linderbaum to the Raiders this offseason. You need interior offensive line help. You bring in John Simpson, and Ione is going to be a day 1 starter for this team. Mekhi Lemon would have been good in theory, but do you really want another small receiver out there with Zay Flowers? So I get it. Could you have thought about Kenyon Sadiq? Maybe, but you need offensive line help to protect Lamar Jackson, to give the clear path for Derrick Henry. This is going to be great for Declan Doyle and Jesse Minter in Baltimore, giving it an A. And then Tampa Bay at 15 is getting an A for taking Ruben Bain Jr. They just got the guy that fell to them. There's always one guy every draft that just goes way too low. There were mock drafts that had Bain at number 2. Honestly, up until the combine, we thought Bain was going to be a top 3 pick in this draft. And then he ends up having this the shorter arms. He's now going to maybe like Kansas City Washington, Kansas City in mocks, was never going past like the Rams or the Dolphins in that range. He ends up going 15 to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is a steal for Jason Licht. You got a tier 1 edge rusher at 15 because you were mocked Akeem Mesidor, Bane's teammate at Miami. You were mocked Keldrick Falk, Cassius Howell, TJ Parker, and you land maybe the best edge rusher in this class. He might be more productive than Arvell Reese and David Bailey over the next few years at the edge rusher position. And they kind of have a smaller window than some of those teams, right? Like than the Giants and the Jets. They're trying to win right now with Todd Bowles, maybe coaching for his job next year. Baker Mayfield entering a contract year. This is a home run selection for the Bucs. And then the Jets take Kenyon Sadiq at number 16. I'm giving this one a C. Now, everything I read about Kenyon Sadiq, people are very skeptical about his size at the NFL level, and people weren't even sure that Kenyon Sadiq was the best tight end on his own team last year. I like Sadiq as a target player, but you also selected Mason Taylor last year. Are we now going to run a ton of like 12 personnel for the Jets? I like their third first round pick, which we'll get to later, a little bit more than this selection. I didn't think the Jets had to be the Kenyon Sadiq team. I thought maybe there was another option for them out there. Clearly, they're fine at the tackle spots, but could you have taken a tackle, bumped them to guard? Maybe you could have been a Vega Ione team after losing Simpson and Elijah Vera Tucker this offseason. Would you have thought about Dylan Thieneman out there with Minkah Fitzpatrick? I wouldn't have hated that either. I just don't think they really needed Kenyon Sadiq. It's a fun offense on paper. I didn't really like the pick that much, so I'm giving it a C. And then the Lions took Blake Miller at 17. This feels like a Dan Campbell guy. They're going to move Penei Sewell, I believe, from right tackle to left tackle now to be that premier tackle for Jared Goff moving forward. Blake Miller was just available. He was a starter every single game basically for Clemson over the last like almost half decade, and this just feels like a Dan Campbell guy. Honestly, we all thought they were going to take an offensive tackle. I thought it was going to be Spencer Fano or Monroe Freeling pretty much leading up to the draft. They ended with Blake Miller. Fine with me. I'm giving it an A. And then Caleb Banks goes 18 to the Minnesota Vikings. This one definitely shocked me because everything I read and everything that was reported, he was not going to go in round number 1 because of the medical concerns, and he ends up going 18 to the Vikings. Like, could they have just traded down and selected Caleb Banks, who is definitely like a top 20 talent in this draft, but there are way too many medical concerns for the defensive tackle position. Do I trust this team at evaluating DTs? It is a different regime, but they whiffed on the Javon Hargrave signing last offseason. They whiffed on the Jonathan Allen signing last offseason, and you take Caleb Banks, who might not even be a sure thing for you in year 1 or year 2, where you kind of have this window right now that you're trying to win with a little bit of an older roster. You bring in Kyler Murray. Justin Jefferson isn't getting any happier, so you want to win right now. I thought there were some better players on the board. They could have taken an offensive tackle. They could have taken maybe Mekhi Lemon. Are we sold on Jordan Addison being on this team in a few years? And you watch Jalen Nailor this offseason. I'm giving it a C. Panthers at 19, they select Monroe Freeling out of Georgia. I like this a lot for them. I'm giving them an A. I wish my Steelers were able to take Monroe Freeling in this draft. I would have been, we'll get to my Steelers in a little bit, but the Panthers take Monroe Freeling, who's probably going to bump in at, I don't even know where he's going to play right away because they have Ikem Ekwonu, who's obviously a starter. They still have Taylor Moton right now. They signed Rasheed Walker from the Green Bay Packers on like a great contract that I thought he was going to play. They've invested a lot in their interior offensive line in Fortner and Lewis and Robert Hunt. So I don't know where Freeling is playing right away, but when in doubt, if you're going to take a stud tackle to protect Bryce Young, I'm all for that. They could have been a Mekhi Lemon team. They could have been a Dylan Thieneman team as well, but I think Freeling, whoever he went to, is probably going to get an A for me. I like him more than Caden Proctor. I would have liked that a lot more for Miami if they took Freeling at number 12. At 20, the Eagles took Mekhi Lemon. I'm giving this pick an A. I don't know if they're going to get A production out of Mekhi Lemon because I'm worried about the Eagles' offensive dynamic next year. So we know that now A.J. Brown is probably getting traded to the New England Patriots. That just feels like a foregone conclusion. So the Eagles traded for Dontavion Wicks a couple weeks ago, and then they end up drafting Mekhi Lemon here, who definitely went later than people expected, and we thought was going to go to the Steelers maybe on draft night. I don't know if he's going to be utilized properly with Jalen Hurts because he did a lot of his damage over the middle of the field. Jalen Hurts does not throw it over the middle of the field. We'll see how Sean Mannion is as the new offensive coordinator for the Eagles. So I have a lot of question marks about the Eagles offense next year, but the fact that they got Mekhi Lemon, they had to trade up a couple spots with the Cowboys. I mean, it's a home run pick here because you could have reached on maybe, not like reach, but like taking a Denzel Boston, a Casey Concepcion, maybe a tier 3, tier 2 receiver. But the fact that you got maybe a tier 1 receiver in Mekhi Lemon at 20 is just another great value pick for Howie Roseman. Sound familiar? And then my Pittsburgh Steelers, who once used to be like the model franchise of the NFL, and now I feel like there's a new laughingstock moment every few months. So they called Mekhi Lemon and told him, like, you're about to be a Pittsburgh Steeler, thinking that the Cowboys, who were selecting at 20, would never trade with their division rival, the Eagles. Well, that happened because on the phone with Omar Khan, the Steelers GM, Mekhi Lemon says to Khan, the Eagles are calling, or Philadelphia is calling me. And then he has to hang up, and Philadelphia's like, we're drafting you at 20. We just traded up. Not a great moment for the Steelers, man. Not a great moment. They have all these picks. They have like the most picks in this draft. They have multiple thirds, multiple fourths, and they didn't want to trade up. I mean, Mekhi Lemon wasn't the biggest need in the world. They could have definitely used another receiver. I don't think Pittman or DK is going to be on this team for the next 3 to 4, like after maybe 4 years. Lemon could be that slot guy that you need, especially if you have Aaron Rodgers coming back. You need somebody that can catch these screens, that can maybe get all their damage with the yak. But they take Max Ihanicher from Arizona State, somebody that's still kind of a raw player. Also sounds familiar to Broderick Jones, but this makes me think like Broderick Jones is just absolutely cooked as a starter. Unfortunately, he's got this neck issue. I think he's had back issues in the past. I don't know if they're going to move Ihanicher on to Troy Fautanu's spot and move Troy Fautanu as well. To the other side, I think Fautanu was pretty good last year, and I'm fine with the Steelers investing in offensive linemen. Like, I'm giving them a B for this pick. Like, I'm never going to doubt a tackle if you took somebody that should go in this range. And with Miller, with Freeling off the board, Ihanicher was the next guy up. It's just like, why did we have to be kind of embarrassing and have that moment with Mekhi Lemon, Omar Khan? Why? Can we not bring Aaron Rodgers back? I know it's happening. So at 22, the Los Angeles Chargers took Akeem Mesidor, the older edge rusher out of Miami. Pretty much expected him to go in this range. I never really mocked him to the Chargers. I thought they'd be more of like a TJ Parker team. They'd take Akeem Mesidor. I'm giving them a B. They definitely need another edge rusher. Odafe Oweh kind of changed and transformed their defense at the trade deadline last year. They lose him in the offseason. Mesidor is going to be a solid replacement, giving it a B under Jim Harbaugh. Malachi Lawrence goes to the Dallas Cowboys at 23. They trade down a couple spots. Low-key would have hated Dallas just staying at 20 and taking Mekhi Lemon and then trading George Pickens at this point. But you end up selecting Malachi Lawrence at 23. I'm giving them a B. I would have maybe liked Zion Young a little bit more, maybe TJ Parker a little bit more, but they're so close to me, in my opinion, where I'm fine with just Dallas addressing the front seven, because you took a secondary player at 11 and Caleb Downs, home run selection there. You need another edge rusher since you didn't get one there. And now you get Malachi Lawrence on that defensive line with Quinnen Williams, now Rashawn Gary, you have Kenny Clark, Donovan Ezeraku. Hey, like, you're building something there in Dallas. It's getting a little bit better now, and hopefully one of these guys can break out. Browns took Casey Concepcion at 24. I'm giving them a B. I thought they definitely needed to address receiver in round number 1. I'm a little bit lower on Concepcion, but I do like the process for Cleveland here with their second first-round pick. I would have liked Jordan Tyson maybe a little bit earlier if they stayed at 6. They didn't opt for that route, but hey, you probably weren't getting as good of a tackle as Spencer Fano at 24, a more important position, given that we just saw like Maxi Ihanicher go at number 21, right? Like Miller, Freeling, Proctor, all these guys were off the board. So you were not getting a tier 2 tackle at number 24. So I thought it was a good process by Andrew Berry, giving them a B. He might be their wide receiver 1 in 2 years. And then the Bears get Dylan Thieneman at number 25. I thought he could have gone as high as maybe like 11, 12 to the Dolphins Cowboys. I think a lot of teams should have considered Dylan Thieneman. I think this is an A pick for Ryan Poles. They desperately need a playmaking safety, and they got one in Dylan Thieneman, who could be one of the best players from this draft. There is a chance he could be more productive than Caleb Downs. I don't think so, but I do think they're pretty close together. So getting this value at 25 is great. Kalen Rutledge out of Georgia Tech goes, I feel like a late draft riser. He wasn't in a lot of mock drafts until like Peter Schrager's first mock draft or something, and then he was considered in there. Maybe it was like Daniel Jeremiah was like one of his final mock drafts. So the interior offensive lineman goes to Houston out of Georgia Tech. I'm giving this one a B. Hey, Houston needs to address that offensive line. I'm glad they did that. Probably the next best interior offensive lineman on the board. It was either him, Pregnon, Pasantis. They go with Rutledge. I have no issues with it. Chris Johnson goes to the Dolphins here at 27, who I like, but I don't know if I like him enough to take a chance on Jamad McCoy, so I'm giving it a C. Now, if Jamad McCoy's medicals are cooked, maybe I can bump this up to a B. I also like Avion Terrell a little bit more. I know Terrell's a little bit smaller, but I just think he's more talented than Chris Johnson. I think Johnson could be good for this team. I guess I haven't really liked the Dolphins draft because I gave Proctor a C, I gave Chris Johnson a C. Maybe not the best first draft for John Eric Sullivan, at least in my eyes. Caleb Lomu goes to the Patriots at 28. I'm giving this one a C. I don't think I like Caleb Lomu as much as all the other offensive tackles that went earlier. I think he's maybe closer to Caden Proctor. Caleb Lomu has also said that he doesn't really like contact that much or being physical, and I don't know, it rubs me the wrong way for an offensive tackle going forward. And this is a premier position to protect Drake May. I think there was some better options on the board. I think this team also needs a receiver. I think Omar Cooper would have been a better pick, but obviously they're most likely going for AJ Brown. It's not set in stone yet, but it's pretty much set in stone. They have some bigger issues with their head coach and that PR disaster right now. So the Chiefs take Peter Woods at 29. I'm giving them a B. I don't think Peter Woods, like, it's going to be that impactful for them right away. Can he just kind of coexist with Chris Jones out there? Either way, Chris Jones is getting up there in age. He's going to learn from Chris Jones and Spags, which is great for his development. And you're getting good value here. This is the Trent McDuffie pick. I'm giving it a B. Omar Cooper, though, I think I would have liked a little bit more. I don't like this receiving core whatsoever. And the Jets take Omar Cooper at 30. I'm giving them an A. I would have probably given them a B if they took Cooper at 16, which was mocked a ton. So they get him 14 picks later. They trade up from the second round to select him. And now the Jets offense is, hey, Garrett Wilson, Cooper, Adonai Mitchell, Taylor, Brees Hall, Kenyon Sadiq. It's something, man, for Geno Smith. Justin Fields is like, where was this for me last year? Maybe Zach Wilson is like, where was this for me a couple of years ago? But either way, this is a fun offense on paper. Cooper's going to be a 6 foot, 200-pound slot guy for them, or maybe can play outside a little bit. Either way, he's going to be a great long-term receiving option next to Garrett Wilson, something they desperately need for either Smith or their next franchise quarterback, which probably will come in the 2027 draft. Keldrick Falk goes to the Titans at 31, so they address offense with Carnell Tate at 4. They passed up on Arvell Reese, so they don't take like an edge rusher or somebody on defense there, so they get Keldrick Falk, who is kind of like a tier 2 edge rusher. Thought Falk was pretty much close to like Akeem Mesidor, TJ Parker, Zion Young in that tier, Malachi Lawrence as well. So I don't mind Tennessee trading up to select Keldrick Falk, because I thought maybe they were going to take Reese early and then maybe get like Omar Cooper in the Jets situation, or take Denzel Boston in the second round. But I like this a little bit more for them, and they need another edge rusher. They have, hey, Jermaine Johnson, Jeffrey Simmons, Keldrick Falk, John Franklin Myers. The defensive line is starting to become something. And then lastly, we had the Seattle Seahawks take Jadarian Price. We had 2 Notre Dame running backs go in round number 1. Price had 0 starts basically at Notre Dame, and he goes in round number 1. I'm giving it a D. Now, this could just be like Jahmyr Gibbs 2.0 or something like that. I don't know, man. I would have taken so many other guys on the board than Jadarian Price. I don't think they were going to take a receiver since they paid Rashid Shaheed, but like Denzel Boston's on the board. Could they have taken just Zion Young or Mason Thomas? Could they have taken an interior offensive lineman? Like, they definitely could have. I just think more important positions than Jadarian Price. I just don't really agree with this one in round number 1. But if you feel like there was a huge drop off in talent from Price to like Emmett Johnson or Mike Washington, sure. Could you have just traded down a few spots and taken Price? I think so. So yeah, that is going to be it for me. I hope you guys did enjoy my round 1 draft grades of the 2026 NFL draft. If you did, I'd appreciate you dropping a thumbs up. Let me know what you guys think about your favorite team's pick or what I said down below. Make sure you're subscribed. I'm going to have more draft content out over the weekend, maybe ranking every team's draft class. I want to do a way too early 2027 mock, obviously. And I'm going to react to my way too early 2026 mock, which I feel like is just going to suck to react to because, oh my God, I'm going to hear Drew Aller's name probably in round 1. Garrett Nussmeier, maybe. Connor Wegman maybe is in that round 1. Fedora Sellers for all I know. Oh boy, that's going to be interesting. So make sure you're subscribed and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.